Welcome to the Business Heroes Podcast. Power up your business and change the world.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Business Heroes Podcast. This is Jared Elrod, and you're in for a great episode today. So I'm in my car, which I'm sure you can tell by the drop in audio quality, so I do apologize for that. But I got a great episode for you guys today. So first off, why am I in my car again? Well, I am actually on my way to an amazing conference right now, to the Life on Fire Ignite event. And I'm actually meeting a buddy of mine, Gideon. He's used to be a copywriter for AppSumo. Now he has the Entrepreneur Dads. That he has got some courses, and he does a lot of copywriting and getting into consulting and stuff with the copywriting. So great guy. So he's down in Las Vegas. We're meeting in San Diego for the weekend, and we are going to have an awesome time. We're going to meet Nick and John Lee Dumas and whoever else shows up and have a great time just getting, as he would say, setting our life on fire. So I'm driving there. I'm got a couple hours to go. I'm listening to some great podcasts. And, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pull out my little MP3 player here and record a quick little episode about kind of an idea I had. I actually have this one on the books to be an episode anyways. I was going to record after I got back. But I didn't want to wait. I was all fired up, and I wanted to give you guys something great. I want to get this out tomorrow. I don't want to miss a week just because I'm at a conference. But really quick, I want to jump into the concept of giving people what they want. So I thought of this idea the other day. I was getting pizza. So, we were doing some Christmas decorating, and I was gone most of the day, and I was like, you know what, I'll just bring home some pizza. We don't have to worry about making dinner. I was messaging my wife, and she's like, yeah, that sounds great. So, I went by Pizza Hut. Now, normally we get Little Caesars just because it's so easy, and they give me what I want. Don't think their pizza is nearly as good as Pizza Hut. But it's easy, right? They give me a great experience. Now, compared to Pizza Hut, which is actually my favorite pizza, and I mean, their quality's gone down a lot over the last, 10 years, but growing up, they were, in my opinion, the best quality, but they're still my favorite. I love both their pan and stuffed crust. And it's just, I guess, what I grew up on. That and Little Caesars, but, from being a youth pastor for so long, I got really burnt out on Little Caesars because we have that, every Wednesday. Anyways, I always end up getting in trouble when I go to Pizza Hut, though. And they're always getting mad at me. And the problem is because they do a horrible job of giving people what they want. And now here's the thing. More than once, I have seen an ad or had a coupon. I have gone to Pizza Hut to get the thing they are advertising me, and then them tell me that's not available, or not available the way I want it. And I'm like, what do you mean? I came here at your request. You came to me and told me about this great product or this great special you're offering. So I came here, and now you're harassing me about that. I can't get that. And the little lady behind the counter, she's like giving you attitude, well, we can't do that. And then when you argue, they're like, seriously? They give you this look you're going to argue with me? You're going to give me a hard time? And it's like, well, I guess. I don't know why I should have to give you a hard time. I walk in a Little Caesars and I go, half the time I don't even know what I want. I just turn around and I just point to the sign and go, hey, that thing, that poster on the window when I walk in, I want that. And, oh, the such and such. Yeah, I want that. Oh, okay. And they're super helpful. So I went in the other day. I was going in. I knew what I was going to get. But as I'm walking in, I'll give you a little quick example here. As I'm walking in, I saw one of those little posters on the window. Now, I like those little posters because it normally means two things. One, whatever it is they're offering is on sale, so I'm going to save some money. And two, I don't have to think. I can go, that looks good, and I can point to it, or I can say, that special on your window, I want that. It makes it easier instead of remembering, oh, I want, well, what do you have? I'll take, it just makes it easier for me. Okay, so I'm walking in, already knew what I wanted, and then I see a special they have. And I saw that they had a new kind of crust. And I'm like, that looks good. It was a pretzel crust. And I had had a few from Little Caesars, and they were good. I like them. So I go, okay, it was a 2 pizza special. So I was going to do half and half with my wife, what she wants and what I want. And then I said, hey, it's a 2 pizza special. Sure, I'll get that. We'll each get our own pizza, and then our kids can just share off of whichever they prefer. And, so I walk in, I go, I'll take your special on the window. Okay, how would you like your first pizza? So I tell her, how my wife wants it. How about your second one? So I proceed to order the pizza that's on the window, and she goes, oh, we can't do that type of crust with that size of pizza. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? And she's like, well, we can't do that. And I go, okay, but so, and I was very confused. And I'm flashing back to the last time I was there when I had a very similar type of situation. I'm thinking, why do I even come here? And I go, wait, so you mean it's on the window? Like, I'm ordering it, it shows it on the window. This size, this type of crust. I mean, I'm literally, you're showing a 2 medium pizza special. One of the pizzas is pretzel crust. And that's what I'm literally just saying, give me what you're advertising as I walk in. Like, you changed my mind. Your advertising worked. And you're telling me I can't have it. And so she's like kind of flustered and kind of annoyed, like I'm some stupid customer who's trying to be difficult. I'm not being difficult. I literally pointed to the sign and said, I want that. So anyways, she's like, well, let me see what I can do. She puts her head down. She's not acknowledging me. She pushes buttons on her little machine for a while. And then she's finally like, okay, well, I can go ahead and do that for you. Like, she's doing me a favor. And I'm like, what do you mean you're doing me a favor? Like, I'm ordering what you're... I was frustrated. I'll just cut it off there. And again, if this was a one-time thing, I'd be like, whatever, that was kind of annoying. But this seems to happen every time. So, again, I prefer Pizza Hut, but I end up normally going to Little Caesars, which I do not prefer by a long shot, because they give me what I want. And part of what I want is to not feel like a stupid customer who's being a jerk just by trying to order something off their menu. That's not fun. Okay, so now, that's kind of what spurred this, kind of made me think of this. I want to give another example here, which is going to be the bulk of this episode, is I'm going to jump back to my youth pastor days. Back in 2009, I went up to a town. This is my first, full-time youth pastor position. So I'd been youth pastoring before. I'd been, a volunteer leader. I'd been a part-time leader. I'd been an interim at, the church I grew up in, so I kind of already knew everyone, when I was in high school and in the youth group, I used to help out in the kids' church, and now those kids were the youth kids, so I'd known them for 10 plus years. But this was my first time that it was an actual full-time position. I'd done some other stuff. I had an office. I had hours. I was getting 100% of my salary through this job. And I went in every day, and I sat behind my desk, and it was 100% up to me to run this organization, to run this group. And I had multiple things I was over, but specifically I'm talking about the actual getting teenagers to my meetings and growing that group. So when I took over, I had 3 students. I like to joke I had 3.5 students, because what I had is I had 3 students, but one of them brought a new girl every week. And he, literally every single week he always had a visitor, but it was never the same person. It was literally a different girl every single week. So there's obviously no consistency building there. So I used to joke that I had 3.5 students when I started. So flash forward 1 year. Now I was doing everything I knew how, everything I'd been taught to grow this youth group. We had a pool table, we had a foosball table, we had video game systems set up, we had Halo, so the kids would come over and play Halo. We opened up, so our building, we had a whole house was our youth room. So we had this whole separate house. And upstairs I had a green screen studio in one room, and I had an intern who lived in another room. And downstairs was the youth center. And then we converted the kitchen into an actual restaurant that was open to the public. And the majority of our business was the high school, because our property was right up against the property of the high school. And it was open campus to juniors and seniors, so that means they could leave and go to Burger King or McDonald's or wherever they wanted to for lunch. But freshmen and sophomores, it was a closed campus, and they had to stay on campus. But we got special permission that they were allowed to come over to our youth center. So needless to say, if it's, stay at school or come over and play video games and pool and foosball and all that kind of stuff and get snacks, like we had 200, 300 kids a day. Or, well, we were open 2 days a week. So, but each day we had 200, 300 kids. Now, granted, the school was only 1,100 students. So, I mean, we had a large percentage. It got to the point to where pretty much everyone at the high school knew both me and my intern. So, we did all this kind of stuff, right? And in 1 year, I grew the group from my 3.5 to 9 students. And I could not hit the 10 mark. I could not break it. So what I would have students message me and say, hey, I'm bringing a friend. And I would get so excited because I go, we're going to hit 10 tonight. We're going to finally hit and break the ceiling. And then from there, we're just going to take off. And then we're going to hit 20, then 30, then 50. I think I skipped 40, but And I would be all excited all day long because I knew tonight's finally the night. We're going to hit 10. One of my students is bringing a friend. No joke. We would get there. They would show up. They would have their friend. A different student didn't show up. And I'd be, are you kidding me? So sometimes it was 2 students. So I would think we were going to hit 10, and we were 8 or 9. And it was so frustrating. And so for a year, I just poured myself into this. We were doing all kinds of stuff. I mentioned I had a studio where I was doing all these shows, trying, I had a green screen. I was doing all these shows based off of popular, styles, genres of shows. We were doing reviews on stuff, just all kinds of stuff that I thought was cool. I was pouring tons of money and effort into it. So, like I said, just those shows alone, I think we built our own social network, Huning Networks. We had a Facebook page. We had all kinds of stuff we're doing. We were building our own network of shows. I had at one point I think 4 different shows going with multiple different hosts between me and my intern. Some of them were doing together. Some just I did. Some he did. And we were doing everything we could. We had this restaurant, and the kids were fine to come. Like I said, we would get so close to 500 students a week between those 2 days coming over. We couldn't get them to come over to the actual youth services though. So a year, and I was able to go from the 3 students up to 9, and it was frustrating. I had a mentor at the time, and so he was kind of coaching me along, and nothing was working. Now in hindsight, it's actually pretty simple to see. I was doing what I thought was cool. I was doing what I wanted our group to be, and I was trying to build the brand of the youth group of what I wanted. So again, I was into video. I spent a ton of time watching, videos online. I used to watch I was a huge fan of Revision 3, The Angry Joe Show, a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. When Kevin Rose started doing his foundation show, that show I watched that thing religiously. I loved it. So that was how I like to communicate. That was how I like to get information, And I assumed that was the same. And I tried to force it. Now, here's the problem. Now, normally you'd think oh, that's a pretty relevant way. The problem was that we were in a small mountain town. And it was a very rural, it was a retirement town. So all the kids in town, they kind of came from 3 major demographics in terms of home situation. They were either a kid from a single home, their parents had split up, and they bounced back and forth between mom and dad. They were a foster kid, and so we had a few people in our church who would get a foster kid. They'd be there for about 3 to 5 months. They would leave, we'd get a new kid. Or they were with their grandparents. They lived with grandparents because their parents were strung out on drugs or were gone, and so they lived with their grandparents. Just a little bit about the town. It was a retirement town, but the other thing about it was a huge meth town apparently, which is weird. It was up. Well, I guess not. It's in Northern California, so drugs are pretty popular up there. And so when I took the position, I was told that town was known for 2 things: old people and meth. Or they said, how it was said is there's 2 types of people in paradise: old people, people on meth. And then some people would joke and say, well, then there's a third kind: old people on meth. So I was completely the wrong audience. If I was in a more of a metropolitan area, that would have worked great. You know, doing the video stuff. Most of these kids didn't spend very much time online. I talked to them, and I'm like, hey, did you check out that video I told you about? And they're like, oh, I haven't done it yet. I was like, dude, that was like a week and a half ago. And they're like, well, I haven't been online yet. I'm like, how have you not been online in almost a week and a half? Oh, I've been busy. You know, me and my dad have been hunting, and then I had some football, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I would try to get on with the social network. 2009, 2010, right? Most popular social network these kids were on was MySpace. I didn't even have a MySpace account anymore. I had to go sign up for a new MySpace account just to be able to connect with these kids online. So I was forcing my own thing that they were not into. So then I kept for several months. I realized just from being around the students, excuse me, that there was a big need and a big desire for a skate park. There were hundreds of kids in town who were skaters, all the way from just like they bought a skateboard and they were trying to stand up on it to like pretty good skaters. Like they were, none of them were like professional, but you know, some of them were pretty good. And there was no skate park in town. There had been one years ago, and someone got hurt on it, and the city took it down. And the town is on a ridge, so it was incredibly slopey. And there were, as far as I know, there was only one sidewalk in town, and it wasn't even a real sidewalk. It was a sidewalk, but it was out of asphalt, and it was like 100-year-old asphalt. So it was basically super rocky. Like you couldn't even walk on it barefoot. It was so bumpy. You'd have if I had to walk on it with my flip flops, like it would hurt my feet. My feet would be sore by the time I got home from walking down this one sidewalk in town. So there was only a couple of places you could physically skate in town. There was a grocery store parking lot, which it wasn't allowed, so they would skate there, and then 30 minutes, 45 minutes, the cops would show up and make them leave. There was the high school, and it wasn't allowed there at all, and they knew them very well there, so it was one of those things where only a couple kids would try it, and then because you would get in trouble, like you basically, if you got caught skating there, they would be in some sort of trouble for like the next couple of days. They'd lose some sort of privilege to the school. And then our church. Now those weren't like the only areas, but those are really the only 3 good places to skate in the whole town. And we had a huge parking lot. It had just been resurfaced, so it was super smooth blacktop. And it was a controlled environment. And then the one place that we had a lower to higher, so there were some great hills they could go down. We had, again, because it's a mountain, there was 2 different levels, so they could jump from the one level down to the bottom and do tricks off of it. And it was perfect. And the problem is, because of insurance reasons, we also weren't allowed to let them skate. So after months of being like, oh man, the video stuff's not working, all this other stuff, the cafe, the restaurant stuff is working really well to meet new students and build relationships with students, but it's not converting to get them over to service, to our weekly meetings. What the heck can I do? Like, I feel doomed here. After a year, I've got almost like barely any growth. Nothing to brag about by any means. So finally, it dawned on me, like, I caught myself one day saying, oh man, if we had a skate park, the kids would flock from all over town. And then it hit me. I go, you know what? I've been saying that for about 5 months. For about 5 months, I've been like, really, like, I've been talking to the skate kids. I've been getting to know them better. I had to call the cops on them a couple times, but for the most part, I've been getting to know some of the kids. And that is the thing. Like, that's all they want to talk about is there's nowhere to skate. And then, in fact, one of the students I got to know, his mom and a couple of the other kids' moms had created like a skate park task force and had been trying to get a skate park going. And it looked like they were going to be successful, but it wasn't going to be until after all their kids had graduated. So finally I was like, you know what? I'm being stupid here. Like, I'm trying to give them what I want, and then I'm acting confused as to why they're not responding when they're getting what I want. And I'm completely ignoring what they want to the point to where, like, if they're skating, like, we're calling the cops on them. And, like, I've got, like, the pastor and board members going out there and yelling at them. And, like, I had to do it, too. So I got to be like, guys, I'm sorry. Like, I had to tell you to leave. And it was frustrating. So I said, this has to change. So I did some research. I put together a proposal. I figured out, I got online. I got some plans for some ramps. Figured out how much it was going to cost to actually build the ramps. I grew up, my dad, I mentioned that he's a CHP, but we did woodworking. I also mentioned that his dad was like a metal worker, but he also did tons of wood construction stuff. And then my dad grew up doing wood construction. I grew up doing that. We remodeled our home. In fact, this year I think like we're all pretty much getting almost completely Christmas gifts that my dad has been building throughout the year. So I have a background in power tools and cutting and measuring things and whatnot. So I got online. I found the plans. Like I said, I did all the research. I talked to my pastor about it in one of our staff meetings. He liked the idea. I don't know why, but he did. Anyways, so he liked the idea, or at least agreed to it. So he looked in, had the church secretary look into the insurance, found out that it was like going to be almost nothing on insurance to cover it. It was going to be like an extra $500 a year, which is like nothing. Because most other youth pastors I talked to, they wanted to do the same thing but couldn't because it was going to be like $500 to $1,500 a month for insurance. So that was no big deal. So I put together a proposal, like a really nice. I printed out everything. I printed out pictures of the ramps, the plans, like what it was going to cost to do them. I got these really nice glossy black folders that I put everything in. And I went to a board meeting and I presented it to them. I got permission to do it. And then I went out and I built these ramps. So it took me about a week and a half to build the ramps. So, and I purposely started, I would work on them about an hour before school got out every day. So every day I had, not all of, but I had a percentage of the junior hires who would get out of junior high and have to walk up the hill to get home, would walk by and see what I was doing. And like they all crossed through our parking lot. And then I would have the high schoolers get out of high school about 20 minutes later, and then they would walk by and see what I was doing. And of course they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm building a skate park. And then of course, like right there, I had them. And they were like, what? What? Can we use it? I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm building it for you. It's for you. You guys can come use it. So it took me, somewhere between a week and 2 weeks to build these things. And in that time, I was just marketing the crap out of it, right? And at the time, I wasn't aware that I was like marketing per se. But man, my word of mouth marketing was phenomenal. Like, so by building these, like I said, right at the right time, they saw this every day. They would come by, they would hang out for 20, 30 minutes. They'd talk to me. I got to know a ton of them. So in that week to 2 weeks period, I'll just say 2 weeks, in that 2 week period, I had already talked to and got commitments from like 30 plus students. Maybe as much as 50 students that they were going to come and be skating. So my very first day I opened this up, we did, we took out like the foosball table. We couldn't move the pool table because it was like 4,000 pounds. I'm not joking. Like when we did move it, we had like 8 guys and a pickup truck, and we barely did it. We all were like super sore the next day. This thing was heavy. But we moved like we set a ping pong table, foosball table, Gatorade, hot dogs. Now the other thing, that was another big thing, the food. Again, I talked about the demographic. So these kids were, I don't want to say neglected, but they were basically neglected. These kids were, not fed well. They weren't taken super good care of, for the most part, not all of them. So the food was another big draw too. That we were doing free hot dogs and we had free lemonade. I think most of the time we had regular and pink lemonade, hot dogs, condiments, and then half the time we'd have candy or whatever. So we were hitting 2 large crowds. Well, no, multiple crowds. And I'll get into the genius of this. And half of this I planned, and half of it was like, I was lucky. So what I did is I basically targeted. At the time, I was doing learning about a lot of marketing stuff. Because I was trying to do all this online video stuff. So I was learning how to market and get people to actually watch your stuff. I hadn't found AppSumo yet, but I'd been looking at a lot of other stuff. And I learned the concept of kind of, creating your target audience. So I targeted the junior high boys skate kids. And here's the reason why. So we opened it up. I think our first day, again, I went a year without being able to hit 10. Our very first day of doing this, I think we broke 20. So we went from 9 to maybe it was the high teens. High teens or maybe even 20. And it was phenomenal. I think maybe it was like 16, 17, 18. It was something like that. Almost 20. And then the next week, I think it was like 23 or 24. And then within just about a month, every single week, we were either high 20s or low to medium 30s. Within about, I'd say 40 days. Why? Because I gave them what they wanted. I wasn't a skater. My intern wasn't a skater. But the kids I was trying to reach were skaters. So I gave them what they wanted. I did a ton of research. I wasn't, I didn't start skating, but I thought about it. But I did spend a lot of time learning all about skate culture. And I used to rollerblade. I was kind of, when I was younger. And I've always thought like that kind of, surfing, skating stuff was cool. So it wasn't like it was a completely foreign thing. And so I just started doing a lot of research. I started watching videos about, skating and all that whole culture stuff. So I learned their language. I knew how to talk to them. I wasn't some dweeb guy coming up who like, oh yeah, you built the ramps, but you're weird to talk to. Like, I could have a conversation with them about all the stuff. I knew most of the tricks they were doing. I could talk to them, hey, did you see this so-and-so video? Like, I knew the brands that they were wearing. So I immersed myself in their culture. And man, like I said, things took off. I made some great close relationships with these kids to where they really were able to look up to us. And there's a lot more that goes into this later. At one point, I even got in a fist fight with a drug dealer for them. And that's a story that maybe I'll tell some other time if anyone's interested. But I don't have time for it right now. I want to wrap this up. So, the other thing I was talking about, the targeting, excuse me, you can grab a quick drink here. So I mentioned how I had targeted these skate kids, and specifically the boys. And here was the genius part of that. What happens when you get a large group of young, athletic boys together? An equal amount of young girls show up. So I didn't have to figure out how to get all these boys and girls. All I had to do was get these skate kids. And then by getting the hardcore skate kids, it automatically attracted the posers, who were and the beginners, the kids who wanted to show up, have a skateboard, and kind of pretend like they skated, and just so they could talk to the girls. It got the girls, because they all wanted to show up and see the boys skate and talk to the boys. And then it got the kids who wanted to be cool and wanted to be their friends, because they got to be where all the cool kids were, and that was the cool thing to do. So I even got the kids on the fringe who didn't fit in, but they wanted to, so they would show up and hang out and try to get into that circle. So by hitting that one circle, I was and specifically focusing on them, I was able to hit all these other circles. And then, we figured we'd feed them. That also hit the circle of just the kids who weren't taken super great care of and were hungry. And they would show up. And I remember one time, this one kid, he texted me and was like, oh, I'm not going to be there tonight. No, he was like, yeah, I think he said I'm not going to be there because I'm at the such and such center across town, and it's too long of a walk. But I'll be there later when the service is over around that time, so I'll help you guys clean up and save me some hot dogs. And I was like, dude, the hot dogs are almost gone. I was like, we're down. There's a ton of kids here today, and we're down to just half a dozen or a dozen or whatever. And he's like, I'll be right there. So I'm expecting, because he said he was across town. It was a 20-minute walk. I'm expecting him to be there halfway through the service. He showed up 7 minutes later. He showed up. He stripped off his shirt so he could, apparently that makes you run faster, and he ran across town. He showed up. He couldn't even talk. He was out of breath. He runs in, grabs 3 hot dogs, falls down on the couch, and just starts cramming hot dogs. So it also got the crowd of kids who were starving, and they weren't going home to dinner, as sad as that is. They knew they could come and have a safe place to hang out, grab some food. And then, of course, we also had the video game set up. So it drew a crowd. People would come over and say, oh, what are they doing? Oh, okay, well, I'm not really a skater. Oh, there's video games inside. So it also drew the video game crowd. So we'd have all these kids outside skating. We'd have all these girls watching the skater kids. And we'd have all these other guys who weren't skaters trying to pick up on the girls who were there to see the skaters. And then we'd have kids who would show up because they were hungry. And we had video gamers show up to go inside and play video games. So, again, 1 year, couldn't break 10. Within, I think it was 8 or 9 months, I was there for another 8 or 9 months. I was there just under 2 years. We got it in that secondary 8 months, I'll say, up to mid-30s to almost low 40s in the kids. Like, we'd have like 35. Sometimes we'd have like 38. If we had like 31 kids, it was like, oh wow, there must be something going on in town because there's not many people here. It was phenomenal. I started getting a reputation even amongst the other youth pastors. So like I became known as like the skate guy, even though I didn't skate. So I'd go to like conventions and stuff for other youth pastors, and they all knew what I was doing, and so I'd get questions. I would like, oh hey, that's awesome, you know, like I get props. So you know, like, oh, it's so cool that you grew so fast. I'd walk around town. I couldn't go anywhere. I loved it when people came to visit me because I couldn't go anywhere without running and having kids say hi. So like we'd walk into, again, it was a small town. We didn't have Walmart or anything like that. So I'd walk into like Kmart, and I'd have at least one, if not two, students who would stop and say hi. They, oh, what are you doing? Oh yeah, we're just getting some bait. We're going to the lake to fish. Again, it was a rural town, not big on the internet. So it completely changed everything just by doing that one concept of giving them what they wanted. So my challenge to you is, you know, obviously there's a very low chance that you're a youth pastor, that is 100 that exactly applies, but how can you apply it to your business? What are you doing? Who are your target customers? First off, figure them out. Because again, I didn't say I want to hit all the students from the high school. I had been for over a year. And then I said, no, I'm going to hit this one particular student because I see this one particular need. And then that drew a lot. It drew almost everyone. There weren't very many groups that would come, segments of students. So what is a need? What is your target audience? And then find their need. How can you just put 100% of your effort into that? And then you'll start to grow. So Pat Flynn, if you don't know who Pat Flynn is, I love listening to Pat Flynn. I listen to his, he's got a blog, he's also got a podcast. He talks a lot about just putting out tons of super valuable content, and that is his strategy. So he uses Facebook, he uses YouTube, he uses a podcast, all these things. He doesn't, email, he doesn't monetize on any of them. And most people would. That kind of goes against what you would normally do as an internet marketer. He doesn't monetize on any of them. He uses it to put out goodwill, help people, draw people back to his blog once they become interested, and then he only monetizes on his blog. So, just by putting out great content. And that's essentially the principle I fell on while doing the skate thing, is my great content was providing the skate park, and then of course the environment, you know. So if they got tired of skating, there was food and drinks, there was couches, there were other kinds of games, both video and tabletop. It was a fun, safe environment that provided, that was my content. It was their number one, what they wanted. In fact, it was such a strong desire that it was like practically crossing over from want to the need category. They were so passionate about it. Like they needed to skate. So how can you do that with your business? Find the same thing. If you've been struggling, trying to get visitors, trying to get conversions, trying to get, whatever it is you're trying to get, and you're just really struggling with it, maybe you are trying to give your audience what you want to give them rather than what they want. Or maybe you're not quite sure, you're confused on your audience, and you're sending out mixed signals, and you're trying to hit everyone, which essentially you're hitting no one. Narrow that down onto a specific kind of person who's going to be the biggest influence. And again, with lots of thought, I figured it was the skate kids, particularly like the junior high boys and some of the younger high school kids, because they were going to be around longer, especially the junior high kids. I had them in junior high for 1 or 2 years, and then they were going to go into high school for 4 years. I had the most amount of time to make an impact on them and for them to become spokesmen for what we were doing, and basically to get referrals from them telling other kids about it. If someone was a senior, that was great, but in a few months they were going to be graduating and moving on, not as big of an influence. So I'd still, obviously pour into them. But those junior high kids, especially the ones that had just went to junior high, I had them for 6 years. If I could make them like a satisfied, I'm going to use marketing in business terms here. If I could make them a satisfied customer, I had 6 years of referrals, and for them to be basically sharing our content, sending referrals over, social proof, providing great social proof, and just all in all drawing a crowd and helping me hit my objectives. So, again, I gave you in the beginning an example of what not to do, kind of a silly example, kind of a small example, but I think it's a pretty relevant example. Excuse me. And then, secondly, I gave you an example of what to do. Now, a lot of that I talked about, I fell into just by literally I tried everything that didn't work first until I finally found what did work. And then as I got into more of the marketing and all that kind of online business stuff, trying to do my first business, well, not my first business, but that other, the online video network stuff, I ended up learning all these concepts. Then I ended up learning why it was successful. And so then I learned how to reproduce it and how to apply it to other situations. And I was able to later on, when I went to my next position, I knew what we did and that we were successful, but I didn't know how to reproduce it because I moved to a different town with a different mentality. They weren't all into skating, not very many of them were, and they were much more into online stuff. So at first I was struggling because that wasn't going to work. And as I was learning all the online stuff and the marketing stuff, I started to learn the principles behind the actions that I did at the first church. And I started to apply them. And again, I started to see results and see success because I was using those principles. So take these principles, apply them to your business, really do some evaluation, and make the changes. Start growing. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. I believe there's some really good stuff in here. So if you got something out of this today, I would love it if you would pass this on, if you could share it. And as always, do me a huge favor, if you love this show, if you're listening and you believe in the content I'm putting out, please go to iTunes and give us a rating and review. That's the best thing you can do right now to help us get the word out so more people can see what we're doing. iTunes really uses those ratings and reviews. And yeah, I would appreciate it, and it's going to help others just like you find this content and be able to help them power up their business too. All right, until next time, guys, I'm Jared Elrod. This is the Business Heroes Podcast, and be awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to the Business Heroes Podcast. If you enjoyed the show today, please head over to iTunes and give us a rating and review. It really helps to help get the word out there. And of course, feel free to share this with any of your friends on any of your preferred social networks. And if you're looking for more information about the Business Heroes Podcast, where you can find more episodes and kind of more about what we do, check out bizdevheroes.com. That's BIZDEV heroes.com. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.